Well, hello everyone and welcome to Southern Oregon University at RVTV and to the Real Estate Show for our live show on February the 9th. I'm Pete Belcastro, this is Joe Brett. We're both real estate brokers with John L. Scott. We get together with you once a month here on RVTV to guess what? Talk about real estate. And there's always stuff to talk about.
Always something new to talk about as well, Pete. It's still a pretty robust market out there. We've had some showings. You've been out working with some folks looking for property. We got a new family into their home this last week, so moving right along, and the sales are continuing to move right through the winter months.
Well, in our first segment tonight, we'll be going over some of those latest MLS stats. And again, the market, that gap continues to grow of sales are outpacing the supply, and thus the demand, because we have so much demand, and therefore that continues to be a seller's market. You'll explore that. In the second half of our show, rural properties are, in such demand. There's so much talk about that. We're going to talk about some specific things that buyers or sellers really need to remember about rural properties, things like abandoned wells, fuel tanks, septic systems, wells, and things like that. It can be deal breakers. We'll talk about that in the second half of our show.
You grew up on a ranch.
Yeah.
I always had the dream of someday living on a rural property until I got my real estate license and went through a couple of rural transactions and found out how much there is that you need to know. Knowing about your land and your water and all of that is very important.
Living in town's a lot different than living in the
That's where I'm
country,
gonna stay,
as you well know. Anyway, thank you for joining us tonight. Of course, we're also on KMED Radio every Saturday at 11 o'clock, AM 1440, FM 106.7. Hope you'll tune us in then. In the meantime, stay tuned. The Real Estate Show starts next.
And welcome back, everybody, to the February edition of the Real Estate Show. Joe Brett here for the Market Watch segment here in segment one. Good to have you along tonight, and some interesting statistics that we'll get to as we continue to have a pretty robust market that is continuing for the second year now through our winter months, where typically sales have tailed off a little bit. Realtors and brokers catch their breath. That's not been the case. Mortgage guys, the builders, everybody's been busy and happy to be so. And so we'll chart the numbers and chart the continuing progress of our real estate recovery here in Southern Oregon. And we've got a great panel assembled to join us tonight. A couple of faces that you recognize, and one that's new to us is Leilani Phyllis from John L. Scott. Welcome, Leilani. Good to have you aboard.
Yeah, glad to be here.
We work together at RE/MAX here in Ashland, and as is often the case, part go different ways and come back, and now we're together at John L. Scott. So it's always an interesting journey for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Tell folks a little bit about yourself and how long you've been in the industry here locally.
Well, I've been in the real estate industry since 1999, and I started out with Century 21, and it turned into Remax, and then Remax turned into John L. Scott. So that's what I've been doing. So
The sign on the building has changed, but you've been there.
yeah, I've
you've
been there
stayed.
quite some time.
And that's really excellent experience that you gain over those years.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
being able to help a lot of people. We learn every time we do a deal. We learn a little something
Yeah,
new.
we
So
do. It's all
welcome to the
different.
program. I look forward to your insights tonight.
Thanks.
Brad Bennington from the Southern Oregon Builders Association.
Howdy.
Welcome back, Brad.
Howdy, howdy. Good to be here, Joe.
New homes are still going up. That's a
Can't
good
build
thing
them
there.
fast enough.
Oh, it's amazing to see, and there's a little bit of a break in the weather here. Has that slowed things down at all during the rainier month that we had in January?
Hasn't slowed anything down at all. It's slowed progress a little bit, but everybody's still running with their foot to the floor. So in terms of effort, it hasn't slowed anything down. In terms of progress, yeah, it wasn't helpful. But you know, we'll talk more about this later. But you know, that builders are running wide open to try to keep up with demand right now.
Yeah, it's every time I'm around and see a development underway and see the guys swinging hammers, it's a great sight to see. And,
Oh, yeah.
And that's work that really needs to be done. We'll catch up on new home building, and we got information for you on the Southern Oregon Home Show that's coming up this month, and have the full details on that for you. The home show is one of the favorites each year. Guy Giles joins us, our mortgage expert. Welcome back, Guy.
Hey, thanks.
Still writing loans, still getting people in houses, and if we can't sell the houses and we can't get people in if you aren't doing your job.
No, we try to get it done, but yeah, there's a lot of mortgages going on right now, and the lending gets loosened up a little bit. Not bad, but we're still writing good loans, but we are busy, so
Yeah.
no problems there.
In the world financial markets, we've seen, we've been anticipating the interest rates in the U.S. have got to rise, but it took a little step back.
Yeah, there's just a lot of weakness in the economy. I thought maybe they would try to stave it off because it's an election year and unfortunately politics get involved, but I think it's, that the markets really needed to correct. I've been kind of thinking that they were going to for the last 6 or 8 months, and they haven't, and now we finally got that a little bit. So helps home loan rates a little bit, not so great for the 401k, but you kind of give one way and take in another, and housing is, I think, investment-wise, a good place because I think we're going to have a lot of appreciation around here over the next few years.
It certainly seems to be headed that way, and a lot of folks are trying to get into homes and get in the game, and sellers are finding that it's a good time to maybe get their home on the market. Have you seen some increased activity, Phyllis, especially with sellers who maybe would typically take the winter off or wait for the spring?
I've seen quite a few people beginning to loosen up where before they were holding back, and they're not doing that anymore. So, and we're just seeing a lot more activity. So, but we still need more listings as well. We just need those people to loosen up even more. So, yeah.
A lot of our local homeowners are finding it a good time to be able to sell and maybe move up to that next home. Mm-hmm. And we've got a pent-up demand of buyers that want to get into the area and want to move to Southern Oregon.
Right, and plus we have a rental situation that's causing a problem too, so that they should be coming in to buy a home. We want to see those people come in and be able to buy a home and be able to afford it. So
yeah. Inventory shortage and tight rental market. It can be tough times out there. If you're fortunate enough to have your place, hold on to it and be glad for that.
Right, for sure.
We're going to take a look at our market statistics, and that will generate a lot of conversation, I believe, because we've got some really interesting numbers and some that are good for the seller's point of view, others not so much for the buyer because of that inventory situation. So let's get our way to our slides right now, and we'll start our conversation with those. But the first thing we want to tell you about, and Brad's going to give us some good insight on this, is the Southern Oregon Home Show. It's the 34th annual edition, and we've got a slide for you to take a look at. It's coming up February 19th, 20th, and 21st. And this is going to be your big go to plug the home show tonight, so give us all you got.
You bet, yeah. 34th annual home show, and a couple things that are interesting. First of all, this is truly the one and only home show. For a while there, we were doing 2 a year. Now we're doing one, and we're doing it big. So this home show, if you've been to our home shows before, this is going to be home show on steroids. I had to buy another building.
Wow.
We completely packed out the building that we had last year, and I had to buy another building. So we're going to have a lot more stuff to look at. It's Ask the Experts, whatever you want to look at. Doors, windows, floor coverings, countertops, financing, whatever it is, we've got it, and we've got lots of it, all in one place. The other thing is really, really cool is this year we're partnering with Butler Ford. Butler Ford is sponsoring the event with us, and he's going to have a lot of product out there and some fun games. Guess the balloons in the car. So having Butler Ford on board is really going to be a lot of fun as well. But it's at the Jackson County Expo. This is the 4th largest home show in the state of Oregon. It's the largest home show in Southern Oregon. It's one of the largest events in Southern Oregon. And we're sandwiched right in by the other 2 biggest events. So this coming weekend is the Rod and Gun Show. Go to that. The weekend after that is the home show, and by golly, you better go to that.
We have to go to that.
You got to go to that. And then right after that is the outdoor show, the Sportsman Show,
Wow.
which is very popular. So you say, well, I don't have a lot of money. I can't afford the $3 to get in on Saturday and Sunday. You know, times have been tough. I got good news for you. Par Lumber is sponsoring Free Friday.
Wow.
So thanks to our friends at Par Lumber, you can come Friday for free and check it out and just have a great time. But hundreds of exhibits, hundreds of vendors, experts, products, services. It's all there, all in one place. You're going to have a great time.
You filled the Compton Arena
Yeah.
and had to get another building.
And we have a waiting list.
Wow.
Yeah.
What has spurred that kind of bringing everybody forward like that? Because you filled it up pretty good last year, but you're talking significantly more participation.
Yeah. Well, you know, we have a community that really likes home construction and likes home products. And, you know, the other thing is I think we're at the right time of year. You know, we've kind of gone through the winter time and people are interested in all those things they've been thinking about. So our vendors are excited. You're going to be seeing our ads on TV and hearing them on the radio and seeing them in print. And, you know, our area just loves home construction. Yep. So this, you know, what can I say is we're so grateful to be able to put this on. 34 years we've been doing this, and this is going to be our best show ever.
February 19th, 20th, and 21st.
I can tell you, I went last year. I had some projects that I got done on my house, and it was kind of nice to just be able to wander around the arena, talk to people, instead of just cold calling somebody out of the, out of the yellow pages, which nobody uses. But looking them on the internet, you get to talk to these guys and see who you want to trust to do those projects at your house. And it was kind of cool to be able to walk around and kind of interview a couple of different ones. And I got some projects done, and it was actually worked out better than I thought. I just happened to be down there, and I wouldn't miss it now.
Yeah,
So,
I'd say that face-to-face, that person-to-person connection you can make with these experts in their different fields is really a huge benefit. Instead of you driving all over town to go see them, Brad's got them all together at the expo.
There they are.
just talk to who you're comfortable with.
Get them out there. We're looking forward to the 19th, 20th, and 21st, Friday through Sunday at the Jackson County Expo. All right, back to the numbers now. Let's get to our market watch for tonight. We're going to start with the January over January stats, 2015 to 2016. We're going to take some time on this one because there's a lot of information on there. The first 2 lines that we're going to look at kind of belie some of the lines below that we're going to look at, but the market dynamics are at work there. Pending sales are up this year in January pretty significantly, almost 20%. Phyllis, we had a pretty good January last year compared to normal market trends, so that continues and it's got even stronger.
Right, yes it did. It's moving right along. I think that what's also happening in our valley is we're getting a lot of press about being a great wine destination. And then the moving to Oregon, we just are getting a lot of press, and I think we're going to see our numbers keep going from outside as well as inside.
For the second year in a row.
For the second year in a row.
Yeah.
And then you're going to have your renters that are going to have to see if they can buy.
Yeah.
So, and some of them are going to be able to buy.
And 2 years running now, Oregon is the leading destination that moving vans are moving people to.
Yeah.
Which amazes me because we are, population-wise, we're spread out pretty far and don't have that many people, but more are coming. And this year continues that trend, and we see that with the home sales here during the month of January. New listings, we did in January of this year take on 8.8% more listings than we did in January of last year. Don't let that fool you. We still have an incredible shortage of inventory that we're going to deal with, and we're going to see that in the numbers below. But again, the new listings, it's not that no one is coming onto the market so much as what's coming on the market is selling pretty fast.
And our days on the market are definitely down. So.
And that's a pretty big swing in a 1 year days on market number right there. That tells you how fast those new listings that hit the market
are being taken.
They're being taken, and there are not enough yet to kind of fill the void and bring the numbers back up. So list price versus selling price. That's the price you list your home for. So if I listed for $100,000 in 2015, I was getting roughly $93,800. That's come up almost 2 full percents. Buyers are pretty much paying full freight.
And they may be paying more than that because many have in the 2,000, I mean the 300 and below, you may get multiple offers. So
Well, and I think that's one good reason to have a good agent to work with, because they know what houses are selling for. And, you know, the days of just going in and saying, hey, this place, you know, Zillow might show that it was pre-foreclosure just because some guy missed a payment 3.5 years ago. And, you know, they're into capturing leads and doing things. And to talk to an agent to be able to get set up on the website, I know you guys have a great one there, at John L. Scott. But, you know, just to be able to negotiate properly, because again, you're just not going to go in and be able to lowball like you used to.
Right.
And just go in with a good, strong offer and, I don't know, take the advice of your real estate agent.
right, it's an education. They have, you know, your buyers and your sellers have to be educated. So
And the market
Yeah.
is moving pretty dramatically.
pretty dramatically and fast.
It's hard to keep up with, and
Right.
unless you're immersed in it every day,
Right.
it really is.
You just really need to move it.
Keep
So,
up on those
yeah.
trends. So sellers are getting pretty much full sales price, in some cases even a little bit more. We still are seeing multiple offers. As Phyllis said, especially on those properties under $300,000, there's a lot of heat on those. So you want to find them fast, be pre-qualified, have all your ducks in a row in that respect so that you're able to write an offer with confidence and that will show well to the seller, and get it in and make a good offer and make your best bet, and don't dally.
Don't dally.
Because others are coming for that house as well. The availability of homes per buyer in the market, boy, almost a 30% drop there. Now, this is where the inventory numbers flush out. We had a few more listings come on the market in January of this year compared to January of last year. But the available supply, it's continuing to decrease, and now down to 5 homes per buyer, where regular supplies of that would be much higher. And a monthly supply of 5.1 homes. A typical market, pretty even market, would be about a 6-month supply of homes. So in 2015, the month of January, was, well, that's starting to slip a little bit. And in 2016, that's been cut almost in half.
How about that?
Yeah, and that's
amazing.
a staggering statistic right there.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And a lot of key box activity. That tells us how many homes were shown and key boxes were open and accessed by Realtors.
Right.
That was a pretty good number for 2015 for January, and we eclipsed that pretty solidly, about
Right.
300 more here in 2016. So that tells us a lot. That was a lot of information to digest on there. Brad, that monthly supply, that ties into new homes as well as the existing homes. And what?
Yeah, those two statistics right next to each other, available per buyer and monthly supply, those are large, significant changes. Those aren't blips. Those are indicative of very large rocks moving around. And as you go to your next slide, when you look at what new house prices are doing, you're going to see the other end of that teeter-totter, what it looks like.
Yeah, it's going to be how much available inventory, if we just got sellers motivated out there, and how much of that is going to have to be new homes that do take time, and it's not a quick process to get those up.
Yeah. That's the thing, is that, you know, you have available existing housing, right? You know, you're going to go buy a house belonging to somebody else. That's fine, but there's only so much of that inventory that turns over at any given time. There's only so many that are for sale.
And less now in this market.
And that's what you're seeing there, is less and less existing product available. So now then, you know, we turn to the new home builders, and how fast can you construct new product? And the answer right now is it's not fast enough.
Right.
We're running wide open, and we can't build new housing fast enough to meet demand. As crazy as that sounds, but it's the truth.
And more people are coming, and there's demand, as we project, is going to continue to grow. So
Oh boy, howdy.
got to
Is
get
it
busy.
ever.
We got to get young guys into the industry and getting those skills and becoming home builders too, because there's a future again, I think, for home builders and for construction
Well-
that we saw go away for a little while.
Yeah, you know, I was kidding Phyllis a little while ago. You know, we were talking about all the people that are coming to Oregon. We said, yeah, you know, come here, but by golly, we're not going to expand our urban growth boundary to accommodate. You know, Portland. You and I have talked about this before, but you know, a few months ago, Portland declared 2 things within 2 days of each other. The first thing Portland did was they came out and said, we declare a housing emergency in Portland. And then 2 days later, they came out and said, and we will not expand our urban growth boundary. So, you know, somebody isn't listening to somebody there, but our legislature's in session right now talking about things that are going to be very expensive to pay for. Our energy costs are going to go up. Mandatory inclusionary zoning, which is going to be government price control of housing,
Right.
that's going to, every indication is that that's going to happen, and that's going to raise the cost of new housing. So when you go to your next slide, what you're going to see is you're going to see that new housing, when you get to that,
let's go one ahead.
yeah, when you get there, what you're going to see is that our year over year, I mean, that's just a staggering number. When you see that we're up 56% from 2011,
Right.
that ought to knock you back on your heels. But our year over year, for Pete's sake, is more than 1% per month.
Yeah.
Holy mackerel. And you know what? This is going to continue into 2016, and it's going to accelerate.
Yeah.
We might be, I mean, God forbid, but by the time we're having the same discussion that we're having right now, a year from now, that up 15% might be up 20%.
Wow.
Right.
And what's driving that? It's more than just the inventory.
Yeah. The thing is that, you know, in a marketplace economic scenario, supply and demand balance each other. So if you have low supply, the price goes up until people aren't willing to pay for it anymore, and then it kind of equalizes. But we have what we call external drivers that work here that are beyond the market. There was a couple of researchers at UC Berkeley that did a report they published last May on the cost on different costs that affected housing, the cost of housing, different drivers. And it won't surprise anybody to know that the number one cost factor affecting the cost of housing was government regulation. Government regulation, more than any other factor, affected the cost of housing. So what we have here in Oregon is we have a state that is hyper involved in housing legislation, from Oregon EPA all the way up through the process. And with these new laws that they're debating right now, I mean, while we're here talking, having this discussion, we have legislators up in Salem passing new laws that are going to push that price without changing the price of a yard of concrete, without changing the price of a 2x4. The price of housing is going to go up in 2016 for no other reason except increased government regulation.
Wow. They find that a ripe target, that housing market too.
It is. You know, a home is the most expensive item that most people will ever buy, and because you have such a large, accumulation of money in one product, it's a target that government finds hard to keep its hands off of.
They could manage the government better to start with than they would need to come up with home industry, but that's a different program.
That's a different program.
For another time. How about new home mortgages? What's the breakdown there? I mean, I would assume that existing homes would be pretty significant, but
I mean, it's weird for me because I could have 3 people walk in that are buying new construction, and all of a sudden I think that I'm doing a whole bunch of new construction loans, and then all of a sudden they just happen to walk next door or something. I do have 3 or 4 that are new construction that are going on right now, though, so I'm seeing a lot more of it. The one thing I do worry about with the prices going up, especially with the legislation and everything, you'll just price out all of our local people.
Right.
I mean, the people from LA and San Francisco will still be able to come in and afford to buy these houses.
It'll still be a bargain for them.
Yeah, so I do worry about the consequences from what the government's doing with just the local person being able to do it. You know, I don't smoke weed or drink wine, so I'm probably in the wrong spot nowadays. But I don't know. I do worry about things getting too hot too fast. But at least on the lending side, we're not doing poor loans anymore.
There's still a place here for you guys. You know. We still have room for you.
Right on.
So a 56% increase in new home median price from 2011, 15%
Holy
from
mackerel.
2015 to 2016. Brad says, get your seatbelts. In fact, get your new home now, because there are some factors that are going to drive those prices even more, and you might as well get in now and get her done and let that appreciation go to work for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're going to back up existing home sales. This is now a 3-month snapshot, barring new home sales, the existing home sales, 2015 to 2016. We see that this is typically, I would love to see the 2014 and 13 numbers for these 3-month snapshots, because I bet 2014 would be down 400, maybe significantly down from 2015. We've had 2 pretty solid winter seasons, Phyllis, of kind of unprecedented activity in the market?
Well, I do know that winter activity has been happening, more than it before, because town is, at least in Ashland, we're more, more activities are going on. More people are coming out and staying longer. And I just feel that it's been going on for a while. We're just seeing more dynamic numbers.
Right.
Yeah.
And the days on market from last year to
Right.
this year for that 3-month snapshot, boy, that's cutting it almost in half. I mean, that's a real significant drop in the time on the market, the time that it takes to get your house sold. So again, for sellers who are considering,
Well, and they have to prepare themselves. That's part of inoculating them, if you want to call it, that be ready when you put your house on the market, be ready to move.
yeah,
Because
That's true. I have so many people that come in to get pre-qualified, and it feels like it's 100 years away, and then all of a sudden, oh my gosh, you get that phone call. My house sold. Now what do I do? And you're completely
Right.
freaked out. Well, it's been on the market for a little while, and you're right. I start mentally preparing them on the day they come in
They
and get
have to.
pre-qualified, or
Yeah.
you just get a bunch of, for lack of a better word, freaked out people.
freaked out,
And
freaked
so-
out people. You don't want them to pull the sale.
right.
So
And when that sign goes up, they need to be ready for
They need to be
knocks on the
ready.
door.
Right.
And people are going to be coming. It's not
Right.
it's going to be sooner than later once you get listed.
sooner than later.
And
yeah.
so don't think you're going to just slip in there in the winter and things will pick up in March, because you'll probably be in escrow by then, if
Yeah.
the way that things are going right now. Median price for existing home sales up 9.4%, so about 2/3 of what the new homes median increase was. That's also a pretty robust increase right there. I'd say, safe to say that folks are doing well equity-wise as well now too, as your theory says, as the water raises, it lifts everybody's boat.
Right. Well, your equity picture all depends on where you bought in. All depends on
Yeah.
where you bought your boat, you might say. So the tide is definitely going up, and this is where you and I remind other people that we are not a market in growth. We're still a market in recovery. So until we hit our baseline, our normal baseline, and that's not going to be for a while. We're still building up to our normal baseline of
For those
new
increases
homes.
we see, that you almost think we should be there by
Yeah.
now.
Well,
That's how far we fell.
Yeah, it's the rubber band, right? It's like you start pulling that rubber band back and pulling it back and pulling it back. Well, when you let that rubber band go, all that stored energy is gonna. So this is kind of what we're looking at here, is that we have a lot of deferred demand that we're now trying to do, and we've got things going on that really are kind of amazing. I was kind of waiting for a guy to talk about this, but we're actually having discussions at the highest offices in our land about at the Fed, talking about banks having negative interest rates. And in other words, actually, and they're doing this in Europe now. They actually charge you interest on the money that you have on deposit.
Right.
And the policy implications of that are huge. One of the things that Guy said, which I agree with completely, is people are worried about where their money is going to go. And one way to look at this is a house is worth what it's worth. Now the value of the money you buy it with goes up and down, but the value of that house is what it is. So what's really changing, you could make the argument, is the value of the money that you're buying it with. So the further you go down the timeline, the less valuable that money is. And what that really means is that if you want to buy something that has intrinsic value like that house, your money will never be worth more than it is right now. If you wait a year, the value of that money is potentially is going to be a lot less. So for people that are on the fence, I would say, do yourself a favor, get off the fence, convert that money into a house, because we have economic factors that are in play out there that we've never seen before.
Yeah.
Our government is $19 trillion in debt. We have never been $19 trillion in debt. So there's a lot of things that are going on out there that are going to have, they're going to affect the housing market in ways that no one can really imagine.
I can't even imagine what $1 trillion would look like, much less to be $19 trillion in debt. I feel better about my own debt situation having said that now. I think we're going to be okay there. One last quick stat, we got about a minute left. Closed transactions, a little bump in the REO sales. I think some of that foreclosed inventory is working its way back. That jumped up a few percent in the last few months. So we are seeing some more of those come on the market. They are relatively good bargains sometimes. As far as the banks are no dummies, they know that people are getting pretty healthy prices right now. But there's some decent opportunities out there. We see that reflected in that 10% number there. Short sales are still happening here and there, and helping a few people out to get done with things. But we're seeing those go further and further away, which is a good thing. Inventory of housing, 2015, we had 962 properties on the market in Jackson County, and it's down 16% to 806. So again, remains a seller's market, and it's looking to continue that way as we go forward. So make your moves, get in with a good agent and representative, and have a great mortgage guy, and take a look at the advantages of buying a new home and how well that's going to do for you going forward.
You bet.
We'll keep you up to date as we get together next month. Thank you all for a great visit, and thank you, Phyllis, for stopping by. Come back again and join us again.
I will.
We'd like to torture our fellow John L. Scott agents with these media appearances, and always get some great information from those folks that are out there on the front lines. So good work, guys and gals. And we'll take a quick break. When we return, Pete Del Castro will be back with the Rogue Valley Association of
Home
Realtors.
show.
We're going to talk about rural properties, and don't
show.
forget the home show at the Jackson County
Home
Expo,
show.
February 19th, 20th, and 21st.
And welcome to the Real Estate Show here on RVTV, our February 9th live show. Here, we're 2 months into winter, and well, the real estate market continues to do well. And one of the areas really seems like under a lot of pressure these days are rural properties. There's no question about that. Sales are up in the 5-acre, 10-acre and above, and it just seems like for a number of reasons, 2016 in rural properties is going to continue high demand. Certainly, no question about that. We're going to talk about those tonight with a pretty good group of people here to talk about rural properties and some of the issues that you face as both a buyer and a seller on these properties. Amy Patton is an owner of Patton Environmental, has been on our radio show before, and past school board member in Ashland and all those kind of good things. I didn't realize that your whole you're all into the environmental part of this, aren't you?
My husband too, yes.
Yeah.
He's in the lab business.
Do you like that?
Oh, sure. Yeah, it's interesting.
I think over time you would really get a good pattern of kind of what's going on with all sorts of things with water.
Yeah, I've been working lately with the Jackson Soil and Water Conservation District and Jackson County, and working on getting the word out to rural homeowners about what water quality is in the valley. There's some issues with nitrate contamination widespread in some parts of the valley, and Also, there's naturally occurring arsenic in several parts of the Rogue Basin and naturally occurring fluoride. And I just like people who own homes to be aware of those levels so that they know whether they need to worry about how much water they're drinking of their own
It's
water.
interesting that you talk about, water quality, because most of us think we have such great water here from the Medford Water Commission and Big Butte Springs and the Aston watershed that water quality is not an issue, but it is, and we're going to get more into that with you as well. Curtis Johnson is a principal broker, and Oregon Opportunities was your old office that you had. You've since changed that around, and I know you're a past board member of SOMLS and been around a while, but tell me what you've done, because you're now affiliated with Harcourts. It's a new name, so tell people about that.
Well, Harcourts started in 1888 in New Zealand, and then they have since gone into Australia and the Philippines, and Thailand, and just in the last 2 years migrated into the U.S., started in California, and they've been in Oregon for a year now.
Yeah.
And so we joined in September, and we're just now getting going.
Well, I know that because I follow, the SOMLS stats, as a lot of brokers do, and congratulations, your office had the biggest sale of 2015 of the Boxar Ranch up there. That's pretty good. $3.9 million, that's a good sale.
We like that. Like to do it next month, too.
So you're involved in a lot of rural property sales. So these issues that we talk with Amy here about water qualities and stuff, they're real issues, aren't they?
Yes, they are. And Amy's the expert on that and can talk about that more articulately than I can. But, as a practitioner, we're really trying to be guideposts for people in terms of trying to introduce them to what the potential pitfalls are, what kind of due diligence that they want to undertake in terms of investigating the water quality and quantity, as well as the septics. And if there's any underground storage tanks, fuel heating tanks on the property that would impact the health and wealth of their property. And of course, Oregon's best business practice used to be you had a dump somewhere on the property and you took the spent motor oil and put it on the weeds to keep the weeds down. And we know better that you really can't do that anymore, but there's still a lot of that kind of property around that it occurred.
Yeah. So when you talk about, let's talk about water first of all, because it's going to be interesting, Amy. This summer we're not going to be talking about a drought. It seems like that we have for the last few years, which is really wonderful. I think we all agree with that, don't we?
Yes, we do.
But water quality in wells we're talking about here, not the main systems, that we all drink in cities and things, but your own well. Do you guys know how many wells there actually are in Jackson County? I've heard all sorts of different stories. Do you know?
The number I've heard for the whole state is about 3,500, which sounds a little low to me. I think it's probably higher than that.
I would think, okay.
And part of the problem is there's a whole bunch of very old wells that just aren't documented. And along with that, we were talking earlier, there's also abandoned wells. People drilled or had an old well on their property, it went dry or became contaminated and they just left it and went and drilled a new well. Well, you really have to be careful if you have one of those old wells on your properties that you keep it capped, you keep it sealed, you keep the space around it sealed. And ideally, you just have a well driller come out and decommission it entirely and fill the hole, because that's a conduit for contamination.
So now there's new rules, regarding well testing that buyers and sellers have to do now.
Right.
A lot of tests, right?
Well, they need to do those, and they are to report the findings to the state, but there's no enforcement. And so
no enforcement.
If you don't do it, there's really no consequence. But I think that, and we were talking earlier, that it's not so much a big brother thing. I think it's just that we're really trying to get a handle on where are these wells and how do they produce and what's in them.
Yeah.
Well, talk about how do wells work? I mean, I know of this last summer, certainly, gold up in the Sam's Valley area, every year a lot of wells would go dry, but I know wells here in the Ashland area around Tolman Creek of people that had them for decades and good wells, and all of a sudden they're dry. So a lot of people obviously had that problem. Will these come back if we have a good year like we're having, or are these are these wells going to be abandoned and then we got to drill new ones and that kind of thing? What do you know about that?
Well, I hear a lot of people, in the 3 years of drought that we had, were having problems with water supply in their wells. And you can have changing water quality too as your water level goes down.
That's what I was going to ask you next. Okay.
So a lot of drillers have been reporting that they've been deepening wells around the valley. But yeah, if you have a good year, your water supply will likely come back. It depends on where your water supply is coming from. If you've got a fracture that's connected to a, water recharge area, or if you're drinking, 1,000-year-old water, it's going to take a little bit longer for that water to be recharged back.
Yeah. Did you see in your business now?
Yeah.
In testing? Did you see changes in the water quality of the wells, drinking wells in this county over the last during the drought time? Did you see that?
So I'm not a laboratory, but I have been doing some free well water testing for nitrate in particular, because that's a man-induced contaminant generally associated with agricultural practices and or septic systems.
Okay.
So that's something we found in the area. It's something we want people to be aware of because it can cause health issues for infants and pregnant and nursing women, young children. What we have seen is, well, the nitrate map I sent you didn't come up, but I did want to show you the arsenic map, if you can pull that up.
All right.
Because you mentioned the real estate transaction testing data is what's required to test for is nitrate and bacteria, and now arsenic's been added to the list since about 2008, I think. And what we use that data for at the state level and for projects that I've been working on is just to show where the high arsenic levels are. So it gives homeowners and residents in rural areas some idea of where to be concerned if you have a well.
And the red there is, oops,
the red
is where?
Is arsenic above the drinking water standard.
Okay.
But to be clear, the drinking water standard in the case of arsenic was determined based on treatment capacity for large treatment plants. Really, there is no safe level of arsenic that has been found.
So when you look at these maps like this, how do you rate them? Is it good? Is it are we in trouble? Or should people be concerned? Or
what I'd like people to see on this map is that there are quite a few areas in the Rogue Basin where there is detectable arsenic. And if you have detectable arsenic in your well, you might want to put on a reverse osmosis unit or something like that to
Curtis
take
Johnson,
care of it.
what do you tell your clients when you see something like that regarding that? What would you advise people to do at that point?
Well, I think obviously you need to get a chemical analysis of what's in the water. Maybe a top 35. What are the contaminants? Particularly if there are people in the household have a particular sensitivity to different things, whether it be boron or iron or whatever it might be. It might not be arsenic. It might be something else. But there are generally good treatment options, either through filtration or reverse osmosis.
So it's not like you have to abandon the well. You can treat the water to where it's safe again for you.
Yeah.
That's good. Come back over here, Amy, and tell me about the unused wells. Now,
yeah, so that's the abandoned wells.
I've been on properties, and I know you have too, Curtis, where here's the well working. This one here was the old well, and you go, okay, so why is it important that we should care about this?
What this slide is showing is that, not only can you get contaminants coming down the top of the well, but also the casing of the well begins to break down over time. So you can get holes in the casing. So any kind of contamination, be it from a fuel tank or from the barnyard or from maybe a tractor pesticide applicator, those contaminants can work their way through the soils with rainfall, etc., and can get down into the soil.
Yeah.
And if they have a conduit like that that's available, even if something's not getting in the top of that well, it can get in through the lower portions of the well. And then that slide shows the contaminated water then can move into the aquifer and get into your own drinking water well. So you do want to take care of those abandoned wells on
And
your
there's
property.
no regulation for this, is there? In terms of you abandon a well, you get rid of that, take all that stuff out of there or whatever. There's no.
The Water Resource Department has rules, but again, they're not adequately funded to enforce.
Curtis,
What I have seen though is most drillers that come onto a site that I've seen where they're putting in a new installation will cap that well. And so
at least cap it.
I think the drillers are at least taking some of that initiative.
But it will still, though, as you're saying, it will still break down over time, and it's going to do it could do potentially damage other wells nearby. I mean, that
The
makes,
best thing is if you can seal the
is
hole.
to seal them.
Yeah.
It's to seal them off. Okay, what about septics? Okay, and those systems. I've everybody has great stories. You know, when you're real estate brokers, you got great stories on septic systems that the seller claimed were perfect and were in perfect condition until the inspector came, and then it wasn't quite that way. This seems to be the biggest problem to me, are septics that don't work.
Well, you know, the great part about this valley that we live in is the varied geology that we have. And so as you go from east to west, you get in the heavy clays and you move over into the granites that are more permeable and more, better to perk out the effluent. And so, and I think over time, the business practices has changed in that old septic systems weren't very sophisticated. It was kind of like an oil water separator, and that was about it. And so I think we got a little more in tune with what was really acceptable and better business practices. There were some new systems that came online that actually would allow some properties that otherwise wouldn't be able to be developed to,
Oh, really? Okay.
have a home site on them. It could be a sand filter system or a Renco system that if you were to rely on it strictly a cap and fill system, the old style, it'd probably have been denied a home site application.
The new systems don't require as much land, so they don't have the big drain
I see
fields.
these drain fields. Some of these places have enormous, drain fields, and I've always
Right, and they really encourage you to have a whole section available on your property as a replacement drain field in case your original drain field fails and you start seeing those puddles of septic material on your lawn.
Now, and there were rule changes again, or certainly in real estate agreements recently, making it really septic, the seller having to get, or the buyer and seller having to have tests, right, on septic systems now.
Yeah, they can actually agree on the inspection of the septic. Obviously, they've had for a long time that somebody agrees to pump and look at it. Now there's a form that inspectors have to follow and use in terms of reporting what the system is. And that's the thing too, we talk about these more complex systems that allow for properties to be developed that wouldn't ordinarily be, but they're more complex. And they require greater systems, whether it be pumping and alarms, and they require more maintenance. So
And they're more
More
money.
expensive.
They cost more.
and they're more money.
And there's really actually nothing wrong with the old systems as long as they're put in a location that can adequately handle it. They are very simple systems.
Now, you brought this photograph here.
I brought this photo.
Yeah, because people really don't know how this works.
Yeah,
Okay.
essentially the water comes in from the house on the left there, and the soapy scum will float up to the surface, and the solids will dump down in the bottom. And then the material in the middle, the effluent, the wastewater, is treated biologically in the system, in the septic system. So if you're operating the system properly and you're not disposing of too much chlorine and to kill the bugs, or you're not disposing of paint thinners in your septic system, which is something also, if you've got city residents moving to rural property, they might not know about those things.
Yeah.
But you have to treat it carefully, and you also have to pump out that sludge every 3 years or so, or else it gets up to the level and
And it
it'll clog
overflows.
your...
Isn't that like the biggest problem?
It'll
People
get
don't
into
do
your
that.
effluent pipe, and then you have what's on the next slide. You have a big problem of really nasty drain field where you're not going to get any flow of water through there because it's just all clogged up.
And if you get to that situation, you want to sell it, you can't do that, can you, Curtis? It's not going to sell.
you're going to have a problem.
You're going to have to fix it.
You're going to have a problem.
You know, my favorite story is, you know, people, the seller goes, I've taken wonderful care of my septic system. It's never failed. It works great, you know, until the inspection comes in.
You really kind of want to ask a property owner, show me your maintenance records.
Yeah.
How often have you had this thing pumped? And, you know,
Well, I was going
have
to
you
say
been
the
taking care of
last
it?
two sales that I had are both rural properties in Josephine County. So, but in both cases, the seller, when they put the property on the market, had done his own tests and did his own septics and all the tests for water. So the buyers came along and accepted those reports within you know, the months that they were done. And I thought that really speeded up the process a lot, and that was really smart on the seller to go ahead and take care of these things for the buyer ahead of time. And I thought that was a smart thing to do. Anyway, so we'll see what happens. What about, so septics are big, and does this make a case, and I'm going to ask you both this, even though does this make a case that we need to get more water, more sewer lines out into some of these areas that we can alleviate these types of problems somewhat? Would that help, or would that not?
Well, the quick answer is yes, it would help. But the thing is that Oregon land use planning is designed to constrict development within the municipalities and deny development in the rural settings. And so those two are at conflict with one another, and as long as that's the Oregon model, that's not going to happen, that they're going to develop the municipalities and no-go.
They want the denser development in the cities, so it's more efficient to have the sewer systems where you've got lots of, it's expensive to build a sewer
And
line.
remember those regional problem-solving hearings that we had all over this county for years?
But to your point, would it help? Yes, it would.
Well, it would help. But my point is, if we know where we're going to go grow in the next 20 years, 50 years, shouldn't we be getting there? Why can't we get there earlier now, which would make water quality better? It's all I hear people talk about in streams and flows, that kind of thing. And the same way with septics that fail, we could clear some of those up.
And
it's a good topic.
Jackson County actually has looked forward on a lot of that. They've, from clear back in the 70s, they identified areas that were septic hazard areas, that the soils were so bad, the clay soils, the difficult shallow water table areas where septics were just failing left and right, and they defined these areas, and they have already put sewer into a lot of those areas.
Yes, they have.
They're not thick in there, they're not sufficient, but if you are in one of those areas as a homeowner and you are having a problem, you can see how far away you are.
Sign me up for that. I would do that. And the same thing I wish the Medford Water Commission is. We've had discussions over the years with them also about the same topic, about providing water to some of these places that we know we're going to grow in the future anyway. And it makes for some good, it makes for good discussion.
It does, and you know, we're very fortunate to live in this community to have such a forward-thinking water commission to begin with.
Yes.
And all the waterworks projects, all the irrigation districts. I mean, we had some really far-sighted people back in the day to create these kinds of utility projects, and it's a real blessing, because there isn't any water better than Medford Municipal Water. But Amy's right, it is incredibly expensive to do these projects, and so trying to reach out in those outlying areas without a systematic plan to how that's going to happen, it gets real expensive.
It brings up another issue, though, that I was thinking about in terms of water supply on these rural properties. I don't know how many people buy a rural property thinking, oh, I can just irrigate my orchard with my water well. Well, then you have to have a water right for that. So that's another thing you have to make sure if you're buying a property and you want to irrigate with it, that you have to make sure you either have access to a ditch or you have a water right.
That's a real misconception, and that's a schooling that we have to take people through, is that your well's good for your house and a half acre. And if you think you're going to, even if it's a 100-gallon a minute well, that's all you can do unless you go through the process of getting a
All right.
certificate.
And you can't just dam the creek that's going through.
No, you can't do that.
Well, there's a consequence if you do.
There's
You can. It may not last.
They are
we had,
better.
we had the state water master talking about these things, and have you seen, Curtis, the demand for rural properties? I mean, we're not just blowing smoke here. It's out there.
It is.
And we're under pressure for water and all the kinds of things that go with it. So our lands are, you know, we got to take care of them.
We do.
Let me ask you a final question regarding this is something I never thought of until it happened to me in a property. Was about fuel tanks that are out there that people don't even know that they're on the properties. Maybe what's the rule regarding if I come across a tank, a fuel tank in the ground, or maybe up in the barn somewhere? I mean, because
Well,
they're out there.
if you're buying a property, you want to look for them. You don't want to
Yeah.
wait till you come across it, because you as the new homeowner become responsible for the
Right.
cleanup of that tank if it has leaked. Some of those old tanks, they're still full of gas.
Yeah.
And you know, if they've been full of gas for 50 years, they're probably leaking. So you want to look for the vent lines along the house. You want to look for a funny little pipe sticking up in the middle of nowhere. That was the fill pipe. Luckily, you know, if you have an above ground tank, it's a lot easier to deal with because you can see what's
And you
going
don't
on.
necessarily
there.
have to remove them, right? And Curtis, you can like fill them with sand or something like that and things like that.
You can. We often recommend that they come out just simply in that,
Just take them out.
because just to do the testing beneath to even see if there's leaking, you can put a slurry in there and leave it in place, but then you have a no-go zone on your property. And so if you take it out and remove it, then you can warrant it's good and use that land again.
Yeah, because it's surprising how much of this stuff is out there. I think that it always surprises me when you hear stories about it.
More than you think.
You don't. There's only more than you think. So it's okay. We're almost out of time here, Amy. So how should people? You really encourage people to test their wells, even you've had the well for years, right? I mean, that's an important thing that you really encourage people to do.
You should have an idea of what your well water quality is, and particularly those things that are issues in the valley. You know, if you have high iron, if you have high sodium, high calcium, you're going to know it because you're going to see staining, or you're going to
taste it too. Yeah.
Yes, if you have sulfur, you're going to know it. But those aren't really hazardous. But it's just good to know if you have those things. But the nitrate is something you can't taste, you can't see it, but it might be there. The arsenic is also something you can't tell is there. And we have some communities like up by Trail where they have really high arsenic.
Yeah.
And they, you know, that's a real health hazard. So you want to
And the
really
good news out
know
of that
about
is that you can treat those, and you can continue to use the water, which is really important. Last question, Curtis. Rural properties. I mean, your office sells a lot of them. You guys are right in there. 2016 is going to be it's going to be really in demand again, isn't it? I'm
Shaping up that way, you know, between, you know, we talked earlier about the growth of the vineyards and the row crops, and of course the marijuana. There's a lot of demand and interest in rural property, and if for nothing else, purely lifestyle. I mean, it's a nice way to live.
People are coming to our valley. We know that, and they're here, and they're coming, and they're going to continue to. Amy Patton, thank you for coming. Nice to visit with you. Curtis Johnson, nice to visit with you. Good luck to you in your new Harcourts. Oregon Op is the office, so good luck with that as well. Well, let me just give you a quick rundown if we can before we get out of here. Don't forget, you can see the Real Estate Show on KMED every Saturday morning at 11 o'clock AM 1440 and FM 106.7. Our next live show here will be on Tuesday, March the 8th. We hope you'll join us then. Of course, you can watch all of our shows on our YouTube channel. And of course, thanks to our sponsors for their support of tonight's program. You can also get a hold of Joe or I if you have any real estate questions. We're happy to help you there. So that'll do it for the Real Estate Show. Thanks to our student crew here at SOU for their support of tonight's program. Until we talk to you next month, enjoy the rest of the evening and God bless.